So welcome once again to Living in the 21st Century. Joining me today is Monique McNeil. She is the director of the Socioeconomic Development Foundation of Boston, and she's also the vice president. Monique, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Errol, for having me. How are you?
I'm doing pretty okay. We were looking for the next guest, but unfortunately, we don't have him. But I guess this is down our line, so we should be able to communicate on this. My question, though, I wanted to ask Dr. Lasseter if he was here. Why do Black men run from the authorities? And it had occurred to me the reason why Black men run from the authorities is because it has so long ingrained in our ancestral DNA that whenever the authority shows up, or anyone who appears to be authority shows up, it only represents a symbol of death or bodily harm. That's where we had the history of lynching to Black folks. And when Black folks runs from the authorities, they're not so much running because they're not just running simply because they feel the authority is there to preserve and to protect. There is that inner feeling and psychological impact that they're coming to do something wrong. Whether you are guilty of a crime or guilty of an offense or not guilty of anything, that's the first feeling that Black folks get whenever the authority shows up at their doorsteps. Now, I just don't want to blame the entirety of the police force. I believe genuinely that the police force nationwide is good. But I believe on every force, every unit, there is a bunch of rascals who doesn't mean well, who hide behind the image of police uniform and what it stands for and what the law stands for, and bring distraction onto Black folks. What is your take about this, Monique?
I would say that you're absolutely correct. I think when people of color see police officers, I think immediately, even if they did nothing wrong, even if they haven't committed a crime or done anything of any type of guilty act, I think because it's so embedded in what typically comes after police involvement or being questioned by police, that the likeliness of them being ridiculed or being physically assaulted or they're going to jail. Those likeliness, the percentage of that likeliness is much higher. And I think in their mind, it's kind of like a fight or flight type of moment, that in their mind, you know, my freedom is going to be taken away from me. I am going to be assaulted of some kind, or, you know, accused of something. And that does lead to them wanting to flee. And it's that narrative. It's the whole system that really needs to be revamped. It needs to be taken down and revamped. And yes, there are good police officers out there. I'm not going to, you know, say that there's a bash against, you know, those who wear the uniform, because I've had the pleasure of going to school with some really wonderful officers and who are close friends of mine. However, that is a very small portion, a very small slither of the pie when it comes to looking at the system in its totality. And the abuses that has been endured by their hands, by those of color, by those of, you know, Black and brown. The story doesn't, the narrative, that we can't really sing a pretty song typically when there's police involvement. And we got to do better as a system to really change that narrative. And like you said, like I said, the whole system has to be revamped. It has to be torn down. It has to be
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, really think about it. Um, we had a 1964 Bill of Rights passed. It should have, and I use the word should have, the bill that just wipe out the Jim Crow years. It was the bill that was to wipe out the equal and segregated laws of this country. And when you think about it seriously, really ponder for a moment and look. You have the Senate, you got Congress, you got the police forces, which represents the totality of the system. And why is it so difficult to make a law that clearly stipulates you cannot shoot an unarmed person? Whether they are running to or running from, they should not be shot. If you shoot an unarmed person, you are guilty of murder in first degree. Think about it. If two people on the street get in a tangle, one shot the next one and kill them, they will get off, not really get off, but they probably get charged on manslaughter or second degree murder based on what the defense come up with or the prosecution, whatever they comes up with. But they pays a price, right? Now, a police in the same context shooting a person who is unarmed, why shouldn't he or she pay the price? I mean, are they above the law? Are they the judge, jury, and executioner? I think it's unfair that people should be murdered and the system pretends it doesn't exist. The black folks go out there and they march and protest against these issues, and the march settled down after a few weeks, and everything go back to normal till this situation pops right up again. And then you do the same thing repetitively again, and senators pretend that this doesn't exist. They're the ones who make the law. Those are the ones we put in power and empowered to represent equality for all. And I'm not going to get here and blame the everyday white man and white woman and black man and black woman for racism. I see that white folks and black folks learning to live, learn to get along with each other on an everyday level. I'm not saying that the color consciousness doesn't exist. It do exist. But the level of racism, even though it's there, it's coming down to a minor scale. But it is propped up in the system from the Senate through Congress and the police forces to keep this thing spiraling out of order.
Of course.
You know, and that's the painful part about it.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, you know, we have to acknowledge that currently there's two justice systems here in America. And unfortunately, that is the case. And that's what we need to really take a look at, that, you know, there are two separate standards. There's two separate protections under the law. And, you know, those are things that we really have to push to be changed. There's, you know, in the answer to your question, Errol, why is it so easy for a person of color to be gunned down or to be murdered by police so easily? It's because our lives are not seen to be of value. You know, when we look at something with value, or we value its worth, or see it as an equal, we treat it as such. Like that good old saying our parents would say, you treat others the way you want to be treated.
Right.
There's something about the color brown, our color, especially men, particularly men, that is frightening or is threatening, or, you know, whatever the case may be, which is leading to these unjustified killings of Black men and women. I think it's something that, needs to be dealt with during training. I think we need to, like I said before, to tear down the system and really take a look at those that we give the authority to take a life. It comes down to the training. And I'm not sure if, training should include nothing but big black men should really be the ones to train these officers, and that they work one-on-one with these trainers. These are thoughts that I just had in my mind, when I think about these things. Well, what can we do to change, to resolve, to rectify this issue, this system in America? And, in my mind, like I said, maybe if we hire and have police officers, potential police officers, be trained by only black men, big black men, tall black men. So that way it can kind of, I laugh, but it's funny, but it's not funny, but so it can take away the stigma or the fear that people have. I think it also comes down to take away the immunity that is given to police officers. I think if we held police officers with individual accountability, because at the end of the day, it always comes down to accountability. If I told you that you particularly are going to be responsible, you are held liable for your actions, it's going to make you think twice about what it is that you do. If I told your captain, he's going to be held liable for what his police officers do, if the chief is going to be held liable, it's going to make you think twice about the people that you hire on your team. It's going to make you, pay attention to their actions and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I think those are things that we need to put into play. Those are things that, we spoke about before in the past, but I think those are things that are going to take legislative action to actually come through, that we need to hold people individually accountable. It comes down to accountability. If I told you you don't have immunity, you pull that trigger, you will be charged with first-degree murder. I think it's going to make you think twice about pulling that trigger. So those are some of the simple things that we as a system could do. And to answer your question, that yes, this has been going on for many years. It's called systemic racism that happens in this country. And it's, happens at every facet within our community, within our lives, within our society. There's, racism within the job market. There's racism within education. There's racism against housing. There's systemic racism against financial gain and accessibility. These are all things that are happening within our society. So yes, to answer your question, it's systemic racism, and it's deeply rooted in the fiber of this country, unfortunately.
Yeah, we see here most recently is that the Republicans are doing their utmost best to suppress future and potential voters' rights. And I'm beginning to see the formation of where the reintroduction of the Jim Crow standard of living creep back into society. It's trying to suppress not the white vote, but the vote that come among color and minorities. And it almost happened, I think it's like in 47 states that are pursuing this path. Now, what is going to happen when black folks, for some castrated reason, can't have the access to vote because of certain barricades set before them? We can see clearly what the former administration done in terms of reaping up chaos and bigotry and causing all problems and riots and so forth in this land. And this is the same party that tried to ignore that everyone on the law have the full access to carry out their votes. But they are doing their utmost best to prohibit that from happening. Where do you see we going from here? What do you think is going to be the future of our democracy?
Oh man, that's a tough one. Hopefully, there's been upcoming leaders on the brinks, leaders such as Stacey Abrams and people who are really dedicated to the cause. But it's going to take all of us to really care about our civil liberties and for people to get involved. And it goes beyond just, those of color. It goes beyond to every single person who says, wait a minute, this is our civil rights. We need to really, pay attention to what's happening. We really need to come out even more so and vote and make sure that our voices are heard, and to challenge those legislators who are trying to take this away from us. I think I think what happened was that they saw how astronomical, when people come together and vote, how things can happen and how the power is within the people. And so what better way to disrupt that power is to take away our voice. And we need more people to understand that voting is essentially our voices. And it's so important. It's a dire situation that we all have to address. We all have to care. We all have to understand that it affects democracy.
Yeah.
And like Martin Luther King said, an injustice or an act against our civil rights anywhere is a threat against us all. And I think that's what people need to understand. But it's scary. It's a real scary situation. And, especially those southern states, it's a real scary situation.
When you think about it clearly, this whole issue here with trying their utmost best to remove Liz Cheney from office simply because she stood up for what she thinks is right, and it don't seems that what is right is right. It seems like what is right is wrong, and because what is wrong is right. And that is the path that the Republican Party want to follow in and pursue.
Correct.
If and when should this happen, we can state for a fact, and we don't need a rocket scientist to analyze this. We can state for a fact that our democracy is in shambles. And I always said to have the trace elements of dictatorship existing in a democracy is worse than dictatorship itself. That is what I see creeping its way in a very diplomatic way as they try to remove Liz Cheney from her seat or her office or her position. And should that happen and they get the upper hand, it leaves to wonder what is going to happen in a future election, a general election, knowing what the last general election had capitalized on lies. Could you imagine the promotion of lies and over 70 million people, assumingly, promoting those lies? Where would America be? It's not about just divided. It won't be just about being divided as America. We can justifiably say that the nation we know that stood for the democracy and democratic principles had been now lured to a victim of dictatorship. How do you view this in this case?
Well, to agree with you, Errol, we are in a democratic crisis. There's no way to really put it. It is a crisis, and it's something that, like I said before, it's scary to think about. It's scary to think about how, a party can really put you out or have everybody turn their back against you because you stood up for what is right. Mm-hmm. It's this asinine, backwards thinking system that really leads to turmoil. And that's all that it has done for the past, going back in the last administration for the past 4 years during that administration. It's real scary to just think about what this could mean. Mm-hmm. And it's like I'm lost for words when I think about how we are really still stuck in this limbo of lies and hatred and cynicism and just just ugliness. It's like it's hard to even. It's shameful. It's
Yes.
for somebody like me who really appreciates democracy and has studied, obtained my graduate's degree in this field and really believe in this process that can work. To see it thrown into shambles and to see it ripped apart by party lines and by the lies, and there's just I'm just lost for words. I honestly am
Yeah,
lost for words.
I can
And I'm
imagine.
nervous about what will happen. I'm nervous
Yes.
about what will happen if there's not enough people who are going to stand up. If there's not going to be enough Liz Cheneys to
Right.
stand up and say, no, wait a minute, that's not right. Or I'm going to stand up to voice what is right. It's scary when you can't voice your opinion and be heard and be respected.
For minorities in our country right now as we speak, do you think the call is to more urge minorities to pursue the highest level and order of education that they possibly can? Because education is power. And I still find that in some projects, there's still a lot of violent behavior going on among our black communities. And that is a path for law enforcement to leverage what they want to do in black communities, whether it's to gun them down or do something to cause bodily harm when not necessary. How is there? Do you think there should be some kind of measure of programs put in place to get black folks and minorities think a little bit different about themselves? Now, I know we are doing well. I know that there are a lot of black people who are trying to grasp the best out of life, trying to educate themselves, but there are twice as much who are victims to the system, who are victims to a lot of prisons around this nation that shouldn't even be in prison, that was given a lot of given prison sentence that other folks of other colors wouldn't get. The list goes on. The inequality, the behavior pattern of injustice keep prevailing over and over and over. And it doesn't seem, even if one cop get charged for murder, it still doesn't stop a few more from doing likewise. It brings you back down again to having laws that states you just cannot shoot an unarmed person. If you got to let them go, you'll get them again. They ain't going to run anywhere. They'll still be here. A criminal will always be a criminal. They think criminal if they have a track record. At some point, you're going to get them. I don't believe for 1 second, because a person cannot speak or cannot conduct themselves in a uniform way that should match up to what the elite philosophical views are, that person should be treated lesser than a person or should be gunned down because the pants just drop a few inches below the waist. I'm not condoning that the ethical way of dressing is correct, but I think everyone has equal rights to live without fear. It doesn't matter if you have locks on your head or a beard on your face, or if you're a big, black, rough, tough, ugly black man and you fear your life. But if the man is big and black and ugly and you fear your life, well, run. People who have fear, run. Don't take your gun and shoot the guy that doesn't have a weapon in his hand and say that you fear him because he was big and black and he looked like he was going to overpower you. That is ludicrous. That is crazy. Everyone in this country is innocent until proven guilty. How dare you take your gun and gun down an innocent person simply because of their appearance? This is the problem that I have. You, a parent raising your black kids in this country, have to sit down every day and lecture your children how you should walk and talk and act when it comes to law enforcement officers. And then another elite and another class of folks, white folks, can say whatever they choose to say, and nothing comes out. I saw on a YouTube program picture already where a white woman was pulled over by a cop, and she raised her hand and said, "Please don't shoot me, don't shoot me." And the cop said, "I'm not going to shoot you. We don't shoot white people. We only kill the black ones." And I believe that's a philosophy with some law enforcement officers on every unit across America. And I think the captains and those who are in charge of their units, if a law enforcement personnel has more than 2 complaints for criminal activity or beating up on someone when it shouldn't be, that person should resign from the force. They should not stay on the force. This path of destruction to humanity shouldn't be, simply because of one color of the skin. The 21st century. And I can imagine 200 years ago, 204 years ago, when black people were looked at as animals when they were brought down from Africa and treated like animals. Mm-hmm. This is the 21st century. We got doctors who are black people. We have lawyers who are black people. We got economists who are black people. We got some of the greatest elite educational people on the planet right here in the United States of America that are black. We are human beings, share the same blood. We speak alike. We eat and drink alike. Why the color of our skin make us a victim to be killed? This has to stop. The Senate has to pass a law at some point that you can't shoot unarmed people, period. I don't look, the symbol of a gun represents death, and who has that gun in their hand is carrying death in their hand. A gun was designed to kill, period. Nothing else but to kill. And we must understand that.
Correct. It really should be the last result.
It should be.
The last resort that anyone turns to. It definitely shouldn't be the first thing. And like I said, it comes down to the individual training. It comes down to, like I said, I was half jokingly saying it, but I was being serious. Maybe we should rethink about our training of these officers. And when they're being trained, to have them being trained by, like I said, big, black, tall men. And maybe it's that inferior of them that's inside of them. So maybe if they were trained and worked with these type of individuals one-on-one leading up to them becoming sworn in, maybe it will change the narrative. And like I said, accountability, individual accountability. If I told you personally will be sued and have to pay for it instead of the taxpayers, because that's what happens. A police officer, they go to trial. It's you and I. We pay for that. It's the taxpayer that pays for that officer to go on trial. So if I said you are awarded the accountability and the financial responsibility, it's going to make you think twice about your actions. Just like, when you're a homeowner and I tell you that if this happens on your property, you will be sued. You're going to ensure that it doesn't happen. You're going to ensure that you let me make sure I put forth these safeguards and I, follow precaution and I do everything within within me that's possible, because I don't want to be responsible. I don't want to bear on the accountability of this action. So once again, it's interesting that they passed a bill regarding Asian hate crime and hate against Asians and individuals, which is wonderful. It's great, but they can't seem to pass a bill together that will stop the unjustified killings of people of color. So I just find it to be very interesting.
It's simple. It's not hard. It's not. You don't need a rocket scientist to figure this thing out. They can figure it out. It's just they don't want to do it. It's the system. Well, Monique, it seems like we are coming again to the end of our program. And it's
been a pleasure
to have you on. And
it's been an absolute pleasure.
This is the first or the last time, so we will see each other again. Well,
absolutely.
Sure. So until then, for all those who have been tuning in, thank you once again for living in the 21st century.